Hello and welcome to everyone, and welcome to INE's webinar on configuring MRA, which is Cisco's mobile and remote access. Basically, a solution which provides VPN-less Jabber so that users outside the office can connect to their infrastructure. So for some of you who do not know me, my name is Rohit. I am a full-time instructor with INE. I hold 5 CCIEs, CCIE route switch, service provider, security, voice, and collaboration. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is we would quickly start off with building MRA on our infrastructure. And for that, I'll quickly share my slide, or in fact my screen, which has a diagram just to quickly show you what and how we would be doing this. So here I have HQ cluster, which is what we would be using, and I have my publisher, which has been pre-configured for my phones, my physical phone to register, and my Jabber also works from within the organization. So IMMP and publisher has been pre-configured for us. Expressway C, which is the core, and the edge has not been configured. The only thing which is configured on those devices is basically an IP address for management and DNS, and maybe NTP has been pre-configured. So now I have an Expressway E here, which is basically a dual NIC deployment. So I don't have a single NIC deployment. This is a dual NIC deployment. So I have one NIC that goes towards the internet or the public segment. So I have an emulated public segment here, which is where I have a candidate PC. That's from where I would be testing Jabber login, which is basically emulating the internet. I have a public DNS here, which is again the root DNS server or some DNS server on the internet. My Expressway E, this is my WAN interface, and this is my LAN interface. So again, I do have an internal DNS server, which has also been pre-configured with SRV records so that my Jabber from within the organization can log in at this point of time. So there is an SRV record, which is the Cisco UDS, which basically points to my pub and my sub. And this Jabber user should be able to log in with an account which is locally created. It could be through LDAP or locally created. In my case, it is a local user which has been pre-created on my publisher. So he should be able to log in. And this internal DNS server here, this can resolve all the devices at the HQ site. However, from Expressway's perspective, this DNS server can only resolve the internal IP. He cannot resolve the outside. And this DNS server here, this would be able to resolve the public IP of my Expressway. Now, this is what is pre-configured at this point of time. So let me quickly show you my setup. I'll quickly shift to my machine. So this is my machine. I have phone view here, which is basically controlling my physical phone, my physical 8845. It is controlling that. And I have a Jabber user, Bruce Banner, which is again a local user, and he is logging in locally from within the organization. What I'm going to do is I will sign Bruce Banner off, sign him out, and we will log in through this account called Bruce Banner from the outside, which is my candidate PC. That's where I would log in from. So I do have my candidate PC here. That's my candidate PC. And I do have Jabber installed. However, I don't have a user. I'm basically not logged in at this point of time. Now, obviously, when I do try to log in through, let's say, bruce.banner and let's say INE.com and try to connect at this point of time, what's the first thing my Jabber is going to do? He's going to try and find my Cisco UDS SRV, which he would not be able to find. He would try to resolve this through the CUPS login. He would not be able to find that. And eventually he will look for Collab Edge, and he should be able to find that. I do have a co-edge SRV record pre-created, but I'll just show you quickly where you can create it or how you should create it. So typically on the internet side, you do require an SRV record for Collab Edge for your domain, and that should point to your Expressway's public IP, if that's the WAN facing side. All right, so I'm going to quickly start off with the Expressway, and we will slowly build this, starting from creating the traversal zone between my Expressway C and Expressway E. So let's in fact look at what are the list of things that I need for building or configuring MRA. Well, the first thing, let's in fact log in. The first thing that we need between my Expressway C and Expressway E is I basically need a trust between them. Why do I need the trust? Because my traversal zone that I would be creating would be using TLS. So I do need a trust of certificates between them. Expressway C and E they need to trust each other, only then my traversal zone would come up. Now, in my case, I could use an internal CA server. So my DNS machine has also been pre-configured as a CA server. So I could use this one as a CA server, or I could use the public CA server. Again, that really depends on your implementation. So you could have like a private CA server, or you could have a public CA server. As long as both your Expressway C and Expressway E, they both trust the same root CA, or even if it's different. For example, maybe I could have this CA server getting a certificate from, or maybe Expressway E getting a certificate from this CA server, and maybe Expressway C getting a certificate from this CA server. I could do that. But to do that, both Expressway Core and Edge, they both need to trust both the root CAs. Only then they would trust each other. So if I'm obtaining a certificate from the single CA, one single CA, then yes, I just need to upload the root CA's certificate. That's about it. But if I am obtaining certificates from different CA servers, maybe Expressway E takes it from the public CA and Expressway C takes it from the private CA, in that case, I need to upload the root CA of the public and the private on both my expressways. So in our case, what we would be doing would be that we would basically use the internal CA for Expressway C and the external CA for Expressway E. That's how we would be implementing this. So my first step should be getting a trust relationship done between my Expressway Core and Edge by obtaining a certificate. So let's do that first. So I have my internal CA here. I should be able to access my internal CA from within the organization, which is my internal CA. And to access my internet CA or public CA, I would have to do that from the public machine, which is my candidate PC. Let's try it from here. Let's go to HTTPS to 192.168.3.9/serve. So this is going to be my public CA. Let's log in with the username administrator, password CCIE Collab. I think it's administrator. All right, so I have my public CA here. Let me just zoom in so that you can see it better. All right, so this is my private CA, this is my public CA. And in fact, you see the name here, HQ DNS CA, which is my internal CA, and I see something here like outside external DNS CA. So two different certificate authority. So the first thing that I would do would be go to my Expressway C and go to maintenance. In fact, before the certificates, there's one thing that you should verify is you should verify your NTP, because there's no point using certificates if your clock is not synchronized, because otherwise your certificates would be invalid. So I have pre-configured my NTP, so my time is correctly synced. Absolutely no problem with that. So I can directly go and start off with creating a certificate or generating a CSR and getting it signed by my CA. So the first thing that I would do would be go to Trusted Certificates, CA. If you see right now, I only have one. I think this is the temporary certificate. I don't have the CA server certificate right now. Because both Expressway C and E, they both are using different root CAs, I need to upload the root CA certificate on both my expressways. So I would first go to my internal CA and go and click here, download a CA certificate. That's my root CA certificate. And taking a bit of time. And click on base 64 and then CA certificate. So this is my root CA certificate, internal root CA certificate. Let's save this. Let's also go to external CA and click on download CA certificate and change the format to base 64 and then download the certificate. So now I have the root CA certificate of both internal CA and external CA. I should upload that to both my Expressway C and Expressway E, because only then your C and E would trust each other. They need to have both the CA server certificate. So I would go and in the trusted CA certificate, let's upload my internal, which is HQ DNS root. This is my internal DNS server, the root CA certificate. Let's upload that. And it is valid. Let's also upload the external CA server certificate, which is named as external root CA, and upload that. So now my Expressway C has both the root CA certificate, which you can see here, and both of them are valid. Let's also go to Expressway E and do exactly the same thing. Security, maintenance, security, trusted CA certificate. And let's upload the internal CA and the external CA certificate. So again, browse external root CA and append. So now I have the trusted CA certificate on both my Expressway Core and Expressway Edge. Now, what's the next thing that I do? The next thing that I would do would be generate a CSR for Expressway C and one for Expressway E and get it signed by their respective CA server. Get it signed. So let's go and do that. That's going to be by going, let's start with Expressway C. Go to maintenance, security, and server certificate. This is where you would do that. And let's generate a CSR. And for Expressway C, I don't really need any SAN or subject alternate name as such. I don't really need anything. The only thing that I need on my cert is the FQDN, my internal FQDN, which is resolvable by the internal DNS. This name, which is hqexpresswayc.ine.com, this does not need to be resolvable by the public internet. It's only resolvable by the internal DNS server. So I don't need any additional alternate names. You can add something else if you want, but you don't need it. So let's go down and fill this up. Let's say country, US, state, California, locality would be, let's say, San Diego. And organization, INE, and this would be CCIE. Let's put the email as rohit@ine.com. And let's generate a CSR for my Expressway C. And let's do a show pen, get the contents of my certificate, and get it signed by my CA. Let's take this, copy, and let's go to my internal CA. Go to home. And click on request a certificate. Go to advanced, paste your contents, change the certificate template to client server authentication, and finally submit. This should give you an option to download the signed certificate so that we can upload that to our Expressway C. Again, choose the format as base64 encoded and then download the certificate. Let's save this and let's rename this to, I believe it is, let's rename this to new Expressway C. So I have my Expressway C's certificate, which is signed. And we can now go back to our Expressway C, go to browse, and upload this signed certificate, which now Expressway should ask me, if it accepts that, it should ask me to reboot or restart this Expressway. So it says file uploaded, and the server expires on 31st March, that's fine. And every time I do something, or if I upload a certificate, there's one thing you should do, is you should reboot your device. You should reboot that. In fact, I did get my certificate here, which is the updated one. And you should do a reboot once you change your, or restart your Expressway once you change your certificates. I'm just going to do a reboot. It should take about 2 or 3 minutes for it to come back. In the meanwhile, we can do Expressway E. Now for Expressway E, I would get it signed by my external CA. So let's go to security, server certificate, and generate a CSR. Again, now for my Expressway E, I do need a few more things. The first thing I need in my certificate is my public-facing FQDN. So how would the users actually connect? So for example, I could have CMS also coming in where I have turn services being turned on my Expressway and CMS, so that I have external users connecting using the browser, basically WebRTC connections. So there are a few things that you need. One is in your certificate, you should have coedge.ini. This is my public FQDN. So if I look at my public SRV lookup, which is the collab edge, that would point to this FQDN. So my collab edge SRV points to this FQDN, and the public DNS server A record this one would point to my public IP address of my Expressway E. So WAN facing Expressway E. So this should definitely be there in your certificate. The second thing that I need is, how will Expressway C, the core, how would that connect with Expressway E? He doesn't know the public facing, he's not doing a traversal connection with the public IP. It's not a single NIC deployment. It is a dual NIC deployment, which means he would connect with the internal LAN IP, which means that in internal FQDN, which his internal DNS resolves. So I should add that in the certificate also. See, this is for my Jabber, because there will be like a TLS exchange between my Expressway E and Jabber. But whatever I put here, this is going to be for my Expressway C to do a TLS connection with my Expressway E. So my internal FQDN is expresswaye.ini.com. So this is resolvable by public DNS. This is resolvable by my internal DNS. The next thing that I would do besides this would be add the domain. Now, if you notice, I don't really see a domain here. I don't really see a domain. So what I should do, because I will not see the domain, I need the domain to be there in my certificate. I don't want to generate my certificate again. So what you should do is, before you generate the cert, maybe you can go to your Expressway C and go to domains and create a domain, because this would be used to send to my Expressway E. I need the option of domain to be there. Let's add this. My domain is going to be INE.com. So a domain managed by this Expressway. You must configure which services are supported in this domain. So once I say create, it would ask me, in fact, a few messages, a few things that I need to edit in that. Let's go back to this. And if you notice, I don't get many options to enable. The reason is, it says unified communication services are not enabled at this point of time. So what I would suggest is, before you generate the cert for Expressway E, before you generate the cert, see, Expressway C was okay. I could generate the cert, absolutely no problem. But for Expressway E, what I would suggest is, before you do that, do a few more things. So go to configuration, unified communication, configuration, enable mobile and remote access. Ensure that once you enable mobile and remote access on your Expressway C, uncheck OAuth, we're not doing OAuth, and enable authorized user credential, because we would be using a username password for authentication. We would be using that. So what I would suggest is do that, enable your unified communication and enable MRA and disable OAuth and create or enable user credentials for authentication. Let's just save this. And now let's go back to domains and click on INE.com. If you notice, now I see some more options. Supported services for this domain. What should I enable here? Do I have any SIP registrations on my expressways? Do I have any SIP registrations coming in? No. So this would be off. Do I have call managers? Yes. So on. IMMP? Yes. That would be on. Am I doing XMPP federation? No, that can remain off. So at minimum, at least these two should be turned on. SIP registration depends on whether you do have any registrations happening to your expressway. And XMPP is again optional if you are doing XMPP federation between different domains of IMMP. So right now I'm not doing that. I would just have my expressway for unified CM and IMMP, and let's save this. So I've defined that. Let's go to expressway E back. Go to configuration, unified communication configuration. Let's leave this page and turn on mobile and remote access and save. Now let's go back to maintenance, security, server certificate. I believe we have, let's generate a CSR and give here expressway.e.ine.com. And if you notice, I have another tab here, which wasn't there earlier. This tab did not exist earlier. I had no option to define the domain which my expressway E would service from the public internet. So there was no option. So you have to enable your unified CM, which is mobile and remote access. You should enable that first on your expressway C and E and define the domain on expressway C and then come to your expressway E and generate a cert, because you don't want to regenerate your cert again. It just takes a lot of time. So just make sure you add INE.com as the domain for your CM registrations. And then let's fill up your country, US, state would be California, locality, let's say San Diego, INE, CCIE, and my email would be rohit@ine.com. Let's generate my CSR. Okay. So once I have this, let's do a show PEM and get this signed by my external CA, which is here, request certificate, advanced, let's paste my output, change this to client server authentication and submit. This should get my certificate signed. Let's do a base 64 and download this certificate. And let's rename this to, let's rename this to a new expressway E. Let me copy this to my local machine, which I believe is here. All right, so I have my new expressway E here, and let's go and upload that to my expressway E. So now I have a signed cert by the external or the root or the public CA for my expressway E. Now, even though my root CA is different, both core and edge, they should trust each other because they both have the root CA as trusted in the trusted list. Let's restart for it to take effect. And now I don't need my CA server anymore because I don't need certs anymore. I mean, I would need my CA server if I was doing a TLS connection between my call manager and my Expressway C. So for the connection between my core and my call manager and IMMP, if I did want to use TLS, which normally you should use, it's recommended. Again, it depends on the business. So let's say if you were a banking environment, you would probably use that. But let's say if you were a private organization and security is not a big concern, then maybe you would not use that. But again, recommended. In our case, because of time constraint, I would not be doing TLS between my call manager and Expressway C. So we would disable TLS. The TLS would only be between my core and edge, which we just did. So once I have done this, what's the next thing that I need? So my certs are all done. I would now create my traversal zone. However, before I create my traversal zone, a few things I should do is let's go and enable the protocols. So on my core, go to protocols, go to SIP. Again, I don't have any HT23, so I'm not doing that. I could do that because you could have HT23 connections also. I'm not doing that. It's just going to be a SIP. So let's enable SIP mode. TLS is turned on by default. Let's enable UDP and TCP. All right, let's save this. This is done on both Expressway C and Expressway E. You should turn on SIP, turn on TCP, turn on UDP, and the default port is 5060 and 5061 for TLS, or mutual TLS is 5062. Let's do the same thing for Expressway E. Configuration, protocols, SIP, and turn on SIP, TCP, UDP, and let's save this. TLS is turned on by default. So if you scroll down now, it should show me that my SIP is enabled, TCP, UDP, and TLS is active. It is enabled right now on both my Expressways C and E. Again, on C, on core, I only have one interface, which is the LAN side interface. On my Expressway Edge, I have two interfaces. One is the LAN side, one is the WAN side. So once I have my protocol turned on, the next thing that I would do would be go to Expressway E and go to authentication and create a username password. Because if you remember, we chose in unified communication, when we went to Expressway C and we turned on unified communication, we chose that we would not use OAuth, we would use user credentials. So I basically need to go and create a username password on my Expressway E, which is the edge, to tell him that what account would my Expressway C use to connect. It's the Expressway C is the client and my edge is going to be the server. So the client is going to connect to my edge. So I need to create a username password. So let's go and create that on my Expressway E. That's authentication, local database, and let's create one. Let's do a new. And this could be anything. Let's just give a username, Rohit, password, Cisco. Okay, And the next thing that I would do is go to my my Expressway C, and let's go to zones, and let's create a zone. Let's do new. And let's name this INE underscore traversal zone. Now, there are different types of traversal zones that I could create. Typically, I could do neighbor, or a neighbor would probably get created automatically when I do the connection between Expressway C and my call managers. But traversal client is something that you could use. So you could use traversal client and traversal server. So the thing is that traversal client and server is typically used for B2B. And so let's say if you were doing business to business, then you could use traversal client and server, and maybe you could create some search rules to match that. But in most cases, you would use the unified communication traversal. This can be used for B2B also. It can be used for even it's basically used for MRA also, or Jabber guest. So I'm going to use the unified communication traversal. And here is where I would put that credential. What is the username password that you would use to connect to your Expressway edge? If you remember, we did create a username called Rohit, and the password was Cisco. And again, this port number, let's just use a random port, let's say 7001, and go down all the way and give the peer address. Now, when we generated the certificate for Expressway E, do you remember what we put in the certificate? We put the public FQDN, which was coedge.ine.com. We put the internal FQDN, which was expresswaye.ine.com, correct? Can my Expressway C resolve the public IP? No, maybe yes, but maybe not. But because my Expressway core has the DNS set as the internal DNS server, and the internal DNS server resolves to the LAN IP. Remember, in dual NIC, your Expressway C never talks to the WAN IP. He talks to the LAN IP. So that was expresswaye.ine.com. Let's go and create this zone. Obviously, my zone would fail at this point of time. If I click on it, let's say if I click on this, it would show me that this zone does not appear as a target in any zone search rules. And if I scroll down, it says failed to connect on this port to the LAN IP. It did resolve. So if this was not resolvable to the LAN IP of my Expressway E, you would get a message here that DNS could not resolve. It would be a DNS issue. So in that case, I would have to go to my internal DNS and create an A record for my Expressway Edge LAN IP. My internal DNS does resolve the Expressway E's LAN IP. That's why I do not see a DNS failure. Instead, I see that I could not connect to port 7001. The reason is because I haven't really configured a zone on Expressway E. So now I can go back here, configuration, zones, and let's create a new zone on my edge. Let's name this again INE traversal zone, and change this to again unified communication traversal. What's the username that my Expressway C would use to connect to me? That would be Rohit. I did create that, so I don't have to go back here. I did create that earlier. What's the port? 7001. And what is the TLS verify subject name of my Expressway C? If you remember, on his cert, we had HQ-expresswayc.ine.com. So this should be the same. What's on my certificate? Again, if you don't know that, you can go back to your Expressway C, go to maintenance, security, server certificate, and click on show decoded. And here you would see your, in your certificate, you should be able to see hqexpresswayc.ine.com as your subject alternate name. That's the name that you should give on Expressway E. Similarly, on Expressway C, we gave the LAN side of the certificate. So here we would give the Expressway C's FQDN and make sure your port is the same, 7001. And let's create the zone. So once I create this zone, if my certificates match, if they trust each other, if my certificates have been done correctly, then I would see my zone as active. Let's go and verify. I do see it as active. Now, if my certs were incorrect, I would see a failure here that my, in fact, if I would go inside this, I would see a TLS negotiation failed. I would see that. For example, if I go now to maintenance, let's say security trusted CA, and let's temporarily delete external DNS. I'll temporarily delete this. The root CA certificate, which means now my Expressway C would not trust the certificate of Expressway E, correct? If I go back to zones and click on this, and let's make some change. Maybe we change this to 16 and save this. And maybe we can make a change on the name also. So yes, if your name was incorrect, for example, if this was incorrect, for example, if I give one more S and try and save this, this would give you a DNS error, not a certificate error. It says failed. And if I click back on that, you would see that could not resolve or DNS resolution failed. Let's go and change this back and save this. It should, my DNS should work, but my traversal zone should fail because TLS negotiation should have failed. Let's go back and check, refresh. It says failed. And if I click back on it and scroll down, you would see TLS negotiation failed. Because obviously I don't trust that certificate because I don't have that in the trusted list. Let me go back and re-add external CA in this list of certificates, which was external root CA. And now it should trust that the traversal zone should come up. It should show as active. Let's wait. Again, if you don't really want to wait, what you can do is make a change, like make one change, or you can just wait. It just happens in a few minutes. Give it like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It would do it again. Or you can just make a change, come back and again make a change. And it starts the verification immediately. And let's go back to refresh. It should show as active. Yep, so now it is active. So my traversal zone has been created. What else do I need? What else do I need to configure? So my zone, my certificates are done. My zone between my Expressway core and edge, they both trust each other. So that part is done. And the next thing that I would do would be basically go to my Expressway C and go to unified communication, add my CM servers. So let's add my publisher. Again, this should be resolvable through an internal DNS server. I do have that entry. So hq-pub.ine.com, username administrator, password CCIE Collab. And since I'm not doing TLS, I would turn this off. Again, if you were doing TLS, then you would need your call manager to generate a CSR for Tomcat. And in my Tomcat trust, I should upload the root CS certificate. But I'm not doing that just to save time. So I would disable TLS and add this. It should find publisher and subscriber automatically, and it should become active. Okay, let's give it a few minutes. Maybe we can refresh. Okay, so I have my publisher and my subscriber. Let's now go and add my IMMP. Again, I could add a Unity connection servers also if I do want my voicemail so that my users, my Jabber users on the internet can even check their voicemail. I could do that. I'm not doing that because I really don't have a UC service created for voicemail, and I don't have my Unity connection integration, my SIP integration done. So I would not add Unity connection. I would just add IMMP and my publisher and subscriber. So this would be hq-imp.ine.com. Again, it should be resolvable by an internal DNS, administrator, password, CCIE Collab, and let's turn TLS off and add this. So I should see, if I refresh this, I should see my IMMP. It still says inactive, but let's give it a few minutes. Now it shows active. So that part is done. And one last thing is what we need to do is create an SRV lookup or SRV record on the public DNS or public root DNS server. So let's go to my, I believe this is my external DNS, internet DNS. If I click on that, I did pre-create that. So if I go to forward lookup zone, INE, go to TLS, I did create a collab edge, an SRV for a co-edge. This is the public FQDN of my Expressway. I believe this was the Expressway E public IP address. So coedge.ine.com, which is _collab-edge _TLS 8443, points to coedge.ine.com. I did create this. And the next thing that I did was I went to INE.com and I created an A record for coedge.ine.com, which points to the public IP of my Expressway E. So I did create that. So if I did not have the SRV, in fact, let me delete that. Let me delete my SRV from here. And if I go back to my machine, my candidate PC, the internet one, let's try resetting this and try logging in with bruce.banner@ine.com. And here, what do you see? Domain does not exist. So it was trying to find actually the UDS record first. It always tries to find the Cisco UDS. It's not going to find that. It's not going to find the CUPS login. So it looks for the collab edge, and the collab edge should be created. The SRV record should be created on the public side. I did not create that. That's why I see domain does not exist. Let me now go back and create the SRV record on my public DNS, which is collab-edge _ collab-edge _ TLS 8443, and that goes to coedge.ine.com. This should be enough. Let's go back to this machine and retry. In fact, let's do one more thing. Let's go from a perspective of troubleshooting. Let's go and go to Expressway C, Unified Communication, under Configuration. And just let me disable this, okay? Authentication. I'm just temporarily disabling this, just to show you something. Let's save this. And let's go back and let's retry. This time it should find the domain. It should find that because now I do have an SRV record which points to coedge.ine.com. Let's reset it. So it did find that, which you can see here, coedge.ine.com. So my domain is found. I see domain is outside.ine.com. But what do I see here? Cannot communicate with the server. I get this message. Let's go back to Expressway E, go to maintenance, logging, and scroll down to event logs, and let's see what we get here. So let's try. I don't see any logs. Let's try again. I should see a 403 forbidden, access denied, MRA not supported, access denied. That's the main error that you see because I get a 403 forbidden. Because again, that's because of my authentication not happening between the C and E, because my Expressway C was configured for a user named Rohit, and C was supposed to use that on the traversal zone. He was supposed to use that for the connection. So which did not happen. So obviously I would see 403 forbidden, access denied. So let's go back to Unified Communication, configuration, and which is on C, and turn this back to basic authentication and user credentials on. Save. Okay. And I believe that's it. Let's go try now and log in. Asking me for a password. My password was Cisco. And I was able to log in. I don't have any Jabber configuration file, but that's okay. It says present server connected. Status is connected. I should get my phone connected, and I should be able to make a call from the outside to, I believe that is this machine. 2001 is an internal endpoint, a phone which is on the call manager, and Bruce Banner is now on the internet. And if he tries to call 2001, he should be able to dial 2001. I see Bruce Banner, and I should be able to answer that call. Let me mute that. So I see video on both sides, and I can communicate, I can talk, I can do chat features, whatever IMMP supports. I can have chat, I can have my voicemail. Again, that all depends if I do want voicemail also. Again, for adding voicemail, there's only one thing that you have to do is just go to Unified Communication on Expressway C and add Unity connection servers also. Obviously, your voicemail setup, your SIP integration with between your call manager and Unity connection should be pre-done. Your voicemail basically should work from within the organization. If it does work from within the organization, all you have to do is go to Expressway C and add your Unity connection servers, maybe disable TLS if you're not using TLS. But you do need to use TLS for C core and edge. They need TLS between them. Mandatory requirement. In fact, if you go to unified communication configuration, you would see, this is on C. Let's go to zones. If you actually go to your zone, traversal zone that we created, you would see that TLS is on. So if you scroll down, should be here. So TLS verification. And if you look at Expressway C also in your zone, INE, I believe it was INE Traversal Zone. If you see here also, you would see it's using TLS for the communication. So pretty much something that you should use. And configuration of MRA is pretty straightforward. Not that difficult to do, just a pre-set up list of things that you should do. I'll do a quick recap on the list of things that you need. You obviously require certificates, the root CS certificates on both Expressway C and E to be uploaded. You require signed certs between Expressway C and E. And then you require protocol SIP to be turned on, TCP and UDP to be turned on. You require a domain to be created on the Expressway core, which has unified CM and IMMP turned on. As far as you require a traversal zone between C and E. And then all you need is to add your publisher and your IMMP on Expressway C under unified communication. Besides that, on your Expressway E, you should go and create authentication local database, a username password. And then your Expressway C would use that username password for its connection, because C is considered as a client and Expressway E, or the edge, is your server. So I hope this webinar was informative to you, and I will now answer a few questions which I see in the Q&A. I may not be able to answer all of them, but I believe I should receive the questions in email, and I can get back to you on some of the answers. So I see one question, which is, what are the advantages of using dual NIC or a single NIC? The thing is that from a security perspective, the problem with single NIC is that you need to allow your Expressway C to go through the firewall outside. And the biggest issue is that if I was using a single NIC, my connection actually goes from Expressway E, it goes out to internet and comes back in. That's the biggest issue, and you don't want that. So that's why dual NIC is recommended and not a single NIC. So again, you have to open up more ports here, and it has to come back, it has to loop it back in, so you don't really want that. Okay. The next question that I see is, how do you conjure that diagnostic report from the Jabber client on Candid PC client app? It looks for useful endpoint troubleshooting. It looks useful for yes, so there's a lot of ways that you could actually troubleshoot issues with MRA also. For example, I could go to my Candid PC and click on generate a report, and I could click on that, and let's say, for example, if I had my protocols SIP, under SIP, if I, let's say, go and turn TCP off on Expressway C, and then I go to my Jabber on the outside and try and log in, he would still be able to log in. But the difference would be that his phone settings would not show up. It would show a red, like a failure. He would still be able to log in. And if I do a generate report, you would see like, you would see a message which says connection mode TCP failed. So again, that gives you information that your TCP is not turned on one of your expressways. So yes, you could use this generate report and then put that maybe in Translator X, and that gives you a lot of information. My next question that I see here is, what licenses do we need for Jabber MRA? You know, the best part is if you buy the Expressway, MRA comes free. So you don't really need a license for MRA. Other features, yes, you do. If you buy the product, you get MRA free. The next question that I see is, if I'm using MRA for Jabber in phone mode, I am assuming you don't need IMMP presence in domain config on Expressway C. You would still need that because your domain normally comes from the IMMP, the domain part of your username. That usually comes from there, because I'm actually doing an SRV lookup. See, if you look at the process of how MRA actually works, the outside Jabber machine is looking for what? Cisco UDS. It does not find that. It then finds Collab Edge. It finds that, and it points to Expressway E. Expressway E forwards that to Expressway C. Expressway C then does a lookup for the UDS internally. So your internal DNS server does have the SRV lookup for the internal publisher and subscriber. So your domain part usually comes from there. So you should still need that. Then I see the next question. I do not follow the need for a local auth password in Expressway E. So the local auth is for, see, I'm not doing an OAuth. It's a client server connection, right? So I'm not doing, it's not a connection between the user. It's not for the user. It's for the Expressway E trying to have connection with Expressway E. So the username is for that. I could do OAuth also. I see a next question, which, can we still deploy MRA for Jabber clients if we do not have IMMP deployed? Yes. Okay. And I see a question. The user is getting a server certificate validation failed when trying to register with MRA hard phone. Certs and N2P look good. So I'll need a little more information on your setup for me to answer that. So maybe you can email me with your question and I can answer that. Then can you discuss the internal IP of Expressway and that is the internal NIC in DMZ with the firewall to internal? I don't really understand the question, but I think what you mean is when we have dual NICs, the firewall is usually permitting all traffic or some traffic, more traffic from inside to outside. Usually the firewall is more restrictive from outside to inside. So having a dual NIC makes it simpler because traffic is going from inside to outside. And most firewalls are stateful, so kind of allows reverse traffic to come in. But if you have like a single NIC, you would probably need to permit a lot of things on your firewall to come back in. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and I should be receiving the questions by email, and I can answer them whenever I get time, maybe tomorrow. Thank you guys for attending, and be safe.